Recap. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Dao, Chapter 1159, Chapter Tiles. The winds within the majestic heaven sect stirred uneasily that day, as though even the heavens themselves sensed the brewing storm. A murmur spread through the gathered disciples like ripples across a still lake. Which one of us is Han Lin? Yang Hao came looking for Han Lin? Confusion clouded many faces. Some believed this to be fortune knocking. After all, Ling Han had just shaken the sect with his victory over Wu Jie. To them, it seemed only natural that a supreme genius like Yang Hao might extend a hand of invitation. But among the crowd, there were those who saw deeper. Gan Xiyun's eyes gleamed with a sharp, knowing light. Her heart surged with excitement. She understood Yang Hao's nature far too well. This was no invitation. This was judgment. At last, Yang Hao had chosen to act. Zhang Long had failed to suppress Ling Han, but Yang Hao? The very thought caused her lips to curl upward. If Ling Han could truly stand before Yang Hao without crumbling, then she would never dare provoke him again. She would avoid him like one avoids a calamity. But if not, then today would mark the end of his rising legend. Amidst the silent tension, Ling Han rose to his feet. His posture was calm, his gaze steady, as though he stood not before a storm, but before a passing breeze. "I am Han Lin," he said evenly. "What do you want?" Yang Hao's eyes flickered across him like cold lightning. There was no warmth in his gaze, only the indifference of someone who viewed others as beneath him. "I will give you two choices," he said, his voice calm yet heavy with authority. "First, kneel, kowtow, and beg for forgiveness. You killed one of my followers, so from now on, you will replace him." A pause. "Second, every time I see you, I will beat you. I will do so until you leave the sect. And the moment you step outside, I will personally kill you." A chilling silence descended. Then gasp! The air itself seemed to freeze. Moments ago, Ling Han had stood at the cusp of greatness, a rising star with boundless potential. Many believed he might one day stand at the very peak of the majestic heaven sect. But now, everything had changed in a single breath. He had offended Yang Hao, and Yang Hao's words were absolute. Submit and become a servant, or suffer endless humiliation, only to die in the end. Though Yang Hao had worded it within the boundaries of sect law, no one doubted his intent. The moment Ling Han stepped beyond the sect's protection, death would follow. Was there any future left for him? Yang Hao spoke again, his tone devoid of emotion. "Choose." Ling Han slowly shook his head. "I'm sorry," he replied, a faint smile touching his lips, "but I don't like either of your options." A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. Yang Hao's gaze sharpened. "Whether you like them is irrelevant," he said coldly. "I have given you two choices. You will pick one." His arrogance was not empty. It was backed by overwhelming strength. But Ling Han only chuckled softly. "Then I'll choose a third option," he said. "I'll ignore you." His eyes gleamed with quiet resolve. "And when I reach the Sun-Moon tier, standing at the same level as you, it will be your turn to choose." The surrounding disciples nearly choked on their breath. He had already offended Yang Hao, yet he dared to provoke him further? Madness. Utter madness. Yet within Ling Han's heart, there was no hesitation. What was the alternative? To bow? To flatter? To beg for mercy? Impossible. Yang Hao was not the kind of man who would retract his words. In his eyes, the world existed only to kneel before him. If that was the case, why should Ling Han show him even the slightest respect? Yang Hao let out a cold laugh. "You are stubborn," he said. "Good, I prefer it that way." His hand slowly rose. Weng, the world trembled. Divine patterns gathered like converging stars, and in that instant, the brilliance of heaven and earth dimmed, as though existence itself was bowing before his will. Power. Overwhelming, suffocating power. Before him, even the so-called 6 king tiers seemed insignificant, mere ants before a true sovereign. Yang Hao was the king among kings. Ling Han's expression grew serious. "You're a Sun-Moon tier cultivator," he said, his voice steady. "And you're going to attack me inside the sect?" Yang Hao didn't even spare him a glance. "So what?" His palm descended. Boom! With a simple pressing motion, a colossal hand of origin power manifested in the sky, crashing downward like the wrath of heaven itself. There were no elaborate techniques, no dazzling secret arts, just a single motion, yet its might was terrifying beyond words. Even He Tao felt this heart tighten. He knew without doubt he could not withstand such an attack. The gap between the Mountain River tier and the Sun-Moon tier was like the distance between heaven and earth. Only those who reached 10-star power might barely challenge the weakest among them. But Yang Hao? Even as a newly advanced Sun Moon tier cultivator, he was a supreme genius. How could someone beneath him hope to contend? Ling Han had no chance. But humiliation? That was something Ling Han would never accept. With a flash, the lion seal appeared in his hand, returned earlier by Shui Yanyu alongside the Vajra seal. Weng! In an instant, his aura surged. His power skyrocketed, reaching the peak stage of the Sun Moon tier. Yet this peak was merely the peak of the consummate level, not the true pinnacle. Still, Peng Ling Han struck. A blazing fist erupted skyward, flames roaring like a divine dragon, colliding head-on with the descending giant hand. Boom! The massive hand shattered into fragments of light. The flame fist continued upward, carrying an aura that seemed capable of scorching the heavens. Yang Hao's brows lifted slightly. "Oh?" he murmured. "A divine seal. So that's your trump card." He sneered faintly. "But even so, your strength only reaches the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier. And with that, you dare challenge me?" He stepped forward. A terrifying aura poured from his body, divine patterns intertwining around him like constellations made flesh. "I reached the high extreme of the Sun Moon tier 12 years ago." Silence, then disbelief. The crowd nearly collapsed from shock. 12 years? From shattering void to the high extreme of the Sun Moon tier in less than 1,000 years? And not just advancement, but perfection at every stage? Such talent defied reason. Even the word genius was insufficient. Ling Han's heart tightened. His current power meant he could no longer fight across tiers. Meanwhile, Yang Hao, likely a 10-star genius, stood at the high extreme. Even at the early stage of that level, his strength could exceed the pinnacle by 3 stars. A power 3 stars beyond the pinnacle, a crushing disparity. Yet, Ling Han's eyes burned with determination. 3 stars beyond the pinnacle. I can close that gap. Die. Yang Hao flicked his finger. A streak of light shot forward. Ling Han answered with a punch. Peng! The attack shattered instantly. Ling Han's eyes narrowed. This isn't 3 stars beyond the pinnacle. Confusion stirred within him. Their strengths felt equal. Could it be he never reached the pinnacle of the mountain river tier? Impossible. Yang Hao was the sect's greatest prodigy. The mountain river tier pinnacle was the easiest to achieve. How could he have failed there? Ling Han didn't hesitate. With a roar, he launched forward, initiating the battle. The two figures clashed like colliding stars, shockwaves rippling through the air. Yang Hao snorted softly, yet his expression turned serious. He could not underestimate this opponent. Blow after blow was exchanged. Fist met palm, light met flame, power against power. After several rounds, Ling Han's suspicion deepened. Their strength was truly equal. Unable to reconcile this, he turned his consciousness inward, reaching into the Black Tower, seeking the wisdom of the notionless saint. The old voice erupted in laughter. "You foolish brat," the notionless saint said. "Do you really think 10-star power at the Mountain River tier remains 10-star after entering the Sun Moon tier? By your logic, wouldn't one reach 11 stars, 12 stars, or beyond?" Ling Han froze. "That's true. So what you're saying," he muttered, "is that the number of stars decreases after advancing?" "Not exactly decreases," the notionless saint explained. "The power of the Sun Moon tier vastly surpasses that of the Mountain River tier. 10-star power at the Mountain River tier only compares to the early stage of the low extreme Sun Moon tier." He continued, "Once you advance, that 10-star advantage compresses. It becomes a 6-star advantage instead." A pause. "Think of your shattering void tier. You reached 20-star power then. Did you keep that advantage after advancing?" Ling Han's eyes widened. Understanding dawned. The vast gulf between major tiers was the key. Each breakthrough diminished the relative advantage of one's power. 10 stars became 6, 6 stars became 3, or even 2. No wonder 5-star geniuses are so rare. Everything finally made sense. On the jagged peak where winds howled like restless spirits, Yang Hao stood tall, his robes fluttering as if they too feared the storm he embodied. Confidence blazed in his eyes, sharp and unyielding. "Although your strength rivals mine," he declared, his voice echoing like a decree from the heavens, "you must understand, raw power alone does not decide the outcome of battle." His words rang with undeniable truth. Though Ling Han had drawn upon the might of the lion seal to elevate his power, such force was incomplete. It did not sharpen his speed, nor fortify his defenses. His understanding of the world's regulations, those invisible laws that governed existence itself, remained rooted at the mountain river tier. Between them stretched a chasm, vast and merciless. Yang Hao's earlier strike had been nothing more than a passing gesture. Though infused with sun-moon tier power, it lacked the deeper resonance of regulations. But now, the air trembled, a boundless aura erupted from him, surging outward like a tidal wave. The mountain itself seemed to bow beneath its pressure, as if a sovereign of ancient times had descended upon the mortal realm. Suppress him! His fist drove forward. Divine patterns exploded into existence, radiant and terrifying, washing over the world in a brilliance so overwhelming it seemed to drain all color from heaven and earth. Ling Han's figure flickered as he retreated in haste. He could only defend, his strength barely sufficient to withstand the storm before him. Against Yang Hao's mastery of regulations, he was at a grave disadvantage. Cold determination flickered in his gaze as he drew forth the divine demon's sword. He knew well. This was no battle that could be won through brute force alone. If he clashed head-on, defeat would be his only fate. You still refuse to yield? Yang Hao sneered, raising his hand once more. From the sky descended a massive hand of origin power, vast and crushing. But this time it was no simple manifestation. Countless divine patterns carved themselves across its surface, transforming it into a construct of terrifying complexity. This was no attack that could be shattered with ease. Ling Han moved. Lightning surged. Shoot! His body vanished like a bolt tearing through the void, his speed transcending limits. With the augmentation of his power, he could now tear apart regulations with greater force. But his body, still bound by its limits, could not keep pace. Crack! 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 As he surged forward, bones shattered within him, one after another. Flesh split. Blood erupted into the air like a crimson mist. And yet, his sword descended. A radiant arc cleaved through the sky. Yang Hao's brows knit together in mild surprise. His hand rose instinctively, touching his face. A faint streak of blood marred his fingers. Ling Han had him. The wound was shallow, insignificant in any ordinary sense. But for Yang Hao, it was an unforgivable insult. He, an invincible king-tier prodigy of the sun-moon tier, had been wounded by a mere mountain-river tier cultivator. Humiliation burned within him. Though Ling Han had landed his strike, his own condition was far worse. His body was drenched in blood, ravaged as though crushed beneath countless blows. Yet Yang Hao understood clearly, these wounds had not come from his own attacks. Ling Han had been injured by the backlash of his own overwhelming power. Which meant, in that exchange, Yang Hao had lost. I underestimated him. Yang Hao's thoughts darkened. His body grew still, but from within him erupted streaks of crimson light, pulsating with ancient, terrifying might. The very air grew heavy, suffocating, as if some primordial beast stirred within his flesh. He struck again. This time, his palm descended. Ling Han attempted to unleash his fast technique, but his expression shifted in shock. His body would not respond. His movements had been sealed. Is this his secret technique? Boom! The palm crashed down like a falling mountain. The peak shattered, a massive crater forming beneath the impact. Ling Han was blasted away, blood spraying from his mouth as his body tumbled through the air. Yet in that critical moment, he had activated the Vajra seal. Without it, the outcome would have been far worse, not merely vomiting blood, but having every bone in his body reduced to dust. Yang Hao's eyes narrowed with intrigue. It seems you possess quite a number of treasures. A mere mountain river tier cultivator, enduring his assaults through not one, but 2 divine seals. It was truly astonishing. Ling Han said nothing. Within his body, the indestructible heaven scroll surged into motion, its power knitting his shattered bones together at an astonishing rate. He ignored the torn flesh and flowing blood. Such wounds were trivial compared to the damage within. As his bones neared recovery, he threw back his head and laughed. What does that have to do with you? Yang Hao, take this sword. Once more, lightning danced. His blade cut through the air like a celestial being descending from beyond the firmament, cold and merciless. This time, Yang Hao was ready. His arms crossed before him, and strands of regulations wove themselves into existence. Divine chains crisscrossing into a barrier, a shield forged from the very fabric of the world. Ling Han roared. The Vajra seal surged within him, raising his defenses to the peak of the sun-moon tier. Now, he could shatter regulations without his own body paying the price. Flash! The sword pierced through the web of chains. Blood followed. Yang Hao's expression darkened further. Again, he had been wounded again. The cut was shallow, etched across his hand, but the significance was unbearable. Twice he had been injured by the same man. If Ling Han stood at the heavenly body tier, perhaps such a result could be accepted. But this was absurd. A mountain river tier cultivator wounding him twice in rapid succession? Rage ignited. It surged outward, transforming into a sea of searing flames. With a furious motion, Yang Hao pressed his hand downward. Above Ling Han, dark clouds gathered in an instant. Crackle! Lightning coiled through the heavens like serpents of silver, their brilliance illuminating the sky. Gasps echoed across the battlefield. He had summoned lightning. Boom! The heavens unleashed their wrath. Countless bolts descended, striking Ling Han in a relentless barrage, each one capable of annihilating mountains. When the storm finally faded, Ling Han remained standing. But barely. His clothes were in tatters, his skin charred black, his entire body resembling a smoldering husk. Without the protection of the Vajra seal, he would have been reduced to ash. Even so, he endured. Through divine sense, he sent a message to the Rain Emperor and Ding Ping, warning them to stay back. Their strength was insufficient. To step forward now would be nothing more than a meaningless sacrifice. Yet, even as he stood, Ling Han's thoughts churned. The sect forbade those of higher cultivation from attacking the weak. Their battle had raged long enough. Surely it had not gone unnoticed. And yet, no elder had intervened. Why? His body trembled. A sudden sway overtook him, and another mouthful of blood spilled from his lips. After all, he was not truly a Sun Moon tier cultivator. Facing a prodigy like Yang Hao placed him at an overwhelming disadvantage. And yet, no one dared to look down upon him. Instead, awe filled their hearts. To battle Yang Hao as an equal, to wound him not once, but twice. Such a feat bordered on the impossible. If their cultivation levels were equal, Ling Han might truly shatter the legend of Yang Hao's invincibility. "Can you still continue?" Yang Hao asked, his voice cold, tinged with mockery. He felt no shame in suppressing the weak. In his eyes, this was nothing more than crushing an insect beneath his foot. Ling Han laughed. Why not? His fighting spirit surged like a blazing inferno, roaring within his heart. Yang Hao frowned. In truth, he had hoped Ling Han would submit. A single admission of defeat would plant a seed of weakness in his heart, a shadow that would linger. If they ever stood on equal ground in the future, that shadow would grant Yang Hao an unshakable advantage. But Ling Han was far more unyielding than expected. This realization stirred an unfamiliar heat within Yang Hao's chest. Though he enjoyed privileges within the sect, there were limits. He could not kill as he pleased. His actions were tolerated only because Ling Han had slain one of his followers. The higher-ups allowed him this outlet, but they would never permit outright murder. There were boundaries that could not be crossed. Moreover, Ling Han himself was a rare prodigy. The sect saw potential in him. Their silence was not indifference, it was calculation. They wished to temper Ling Han's spirit, to ensure he did not grow arrogant. Very well, Yang Hao decided, his gaze turning icy. I will crush him. I will defeat him so completely that the mere sight of me will haunt his soul. His arms moved, and in the air, divine chains danced once more, each one a manifestation of supreme power, weaving together the promise of an overwhelming end.